Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. Daddy, want no more, and I can go. Daddy, want more, Daddy, want more, la la. Daddy, want no more, Daddy, want more. Daddy want more, la la. Daddy want more. Yeah, gonna put on my gold crown down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna put on my golden crown down by the riverside. Daddy will want no more. Daddy want more, Lord. Daddy want more, Lord, Lord. Daddy, you want no more. Daddy want more. Daddy want more, Lord, Lord. Daddy, no more, no more. Well, we'll put on my long, my road down by the riverside.
Yeah.
Here comes
Okay, so 5:30.
You're gonna go right into the front door.
Okay, okay. So I'll pull up. I'm gonna leave. So I'll pull up just after the legends and just wait there.
Yeah.
And then you guys are.
And I'll be in the front with the band.
This reactor is not going up to start because it's already shut down for refueling. We want to make sure it's going to start. So we are.
Let's go slow so it lasts a long time. Right? Make this last a long time. We're not going to be in a hurry.
I guess I'm not.
We are at the tipping point and we're going to win. Entergy is losing money on this reactor. They are in trouble and we are going to take them down bit by bit, making them put up the money they committed to put up in 2002 when they bought the nuke. And we will win.
As you can see here, they've already lost the people. They lost the people a long time ago. And now they're just hanging on by the fact that they have corporate power, and we're going to chip away at that. We just have to chip away at corporate power and power through the court system, and we will, because this thing is going down.
What's remarkable is we have the state, we have the legislators on our side, we have the government committed to Vermont Yankees closure. And the government is committed because of all the people here and all the people who have shown up again and again and contacted them and supported them. And it is the people that are going to close this nuke.
Welcome back.
Right after as far as the goes, we'll be using about 5 minutes. The band's going to play a song, an Italian song. There's some songs when we don't have enough, but we'll do that. So, right out. Thank you. We'll see you at the luncheon. Let's go. Go!
resting while we climb the hill.
Hello there.
Just past the front of the library.
I don't even see anything back there.
Claire, how many?
illegally. Yeah, it is. But that's why we're here today. We are here today to remind them and remind everyone that this is our choice, this is our voice, and we're not going to let them operate any longer. That's why we're here today. So that reminder, that being visible, being vocal, and doing events like today, and celebrating the fact that this is our choice, and that we're making this choice, that's why today is so important. So we have an excellent program for you today. We've got 3 spunky speakers ready to give some great speeches here for you today. We've got a couple of performances. We've also got DJ Selector D from WVEW, Brattleboro's community radio station. So what do we hope to accomplish today? What do we hope to get out of today? Well, we've got well, that's the meta goal, right? That's the end goal that we want to get. Keep it short. Yeah. So today what we want to do is we want to educate and inform. So there's been a lot happening in this year that Entergy has been operating illegally. And we know there's been a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of things going on that people can't control. So we want to put the control back in our hands. And so that's why we're here today. So the speakers that we've got today are going to talk to us about what's been happening over this last year and where we're going, what we can do. So the second piece then is inspire and action. So we're going to have a speaker talk to us about what we can do, how we can continue to be vigilant, how we can continue to be active, and what we can do now. So we've got a couple of great speakers here. But first, before our first presenter, a couple of things. In the lobby, you may not have had a chance beforehand, but in the lobby, we'll have a couple of tables and ways for you to sign up and learn about some of the actions that will be coming up in the future, some of the things that you can get involved in. Secondly, these little contraptions right here. If you've got them, you can silence them. That would be really helpful for everyone. But, if your little device right here does video, does photographs, keep them on. Take photos, take some video, post them to YouTube, like us on Facebook. We want everyone to be their own media, and this is part of sharing our voice and sharing what we are doing, this movement that we are building. So that's really important. So keep these out if you have that capability, and if you haven't already, like us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/shutdownvermont Yankee. Stay informed and hear about all the actions that are coming out. So my name is Chad. I will be your MC in ushering us along today. I'm very excited to see this turnout. Thank you so much for coming out today. This is really amazing. So our first speaker today has been organizing to end dirty power for more than 25 years. He's the founding member of the Vermont Citizens Action Network, which is our Vermont Citizens Action Network. So they are the ones, they're our citizen lobbyists doing all sorts of good work up in Montpelier for us. He's an organizer with the Vermont Yankee Decommissioning Alliance, doing their thing. They've been doing their thing for many years now, and he always has a great story to share. So please stomp your feet, clap your hands for Chris Williams.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. That was a beautiful parade. That's a beautiful sight.
All right.
It's been a long year.
It has.
It's been a long year, and there's been a lot going on that some people feel they don't have a part in, or they don't understand, or they can't control, like this spotlight.
Yeah. Change the light.
I'm here to talk about something very arcane, very slow-moving, very unexciting. But I'll do my best to pump it up a bit. As we all know, What Entergy is lacking is a certificate of public good. The blessing of the state of Vermont for them to continue operating. There have been proceedings before our Public Service Board in a cause numbered 7862. I got to spend 8 out of the 16 days in February in the hearing room. And I'm here to tell you that I lived to tell about it. It's remarkable that I'm not in a coma, because the proceedings are slow and legal and dominated by some very expensive lawyers from a very unscrupulous company. Entergy had to make its case that it deserved another 20 years of operating that plant, or 19 at this point.
So they are their own agreements?
And Entergy hired hordes of lawyers to do their bidding for them.
Did you say whores?
On our side was the state of Vermont and the Department of Public Service and lawyers from the New England Coalition, DPERD, the Vermont Natural Resources Council, and the Conservation Law Foundation. To make a long story short, I believe, and I'm handicapping, that the Public Service Board will not accept Entergy's lies. They will not bet on a redemption of that corporation's behavior for the next 20 years. I believe they will reject the certificate of public good. So we're going to have to be patient. We're going to have to support them. They need to hear from everybody.
How much money do they need, Chris?
And we should hear it. We should hear it in October. But I got to tell you, and then I'm going to wrap up, what the highlight of my 8 days in that hearing room were. 3 Entergy executives were subpoenaed and brought before the Public Service Board to answer for their behavior, to answer for the leaks, to answer for the lies. And they did the old song and dance. Yes, it was a sad time for us. And yes, there was miscommunication. And yes, we disciplined employees. And at that point, one of the commissioners said, one of the board members said, so you disciplined the employees. Did anybody get fired? Oh, well, I don't know the answer to that. Are you sure that you just don't take people off the job who do something wrong and put them at another nuclear power plant? Well, I don't think I'm qualified to answer that. And then one of the board members pointed out that he was in fact a professor of contract law, board member Burke. And he said, does Entergy have the fundamentals when it comes to understanding what it means to execute and honor a contract? Well, I'm sorry, I can't answer that. But can you get somebody in here who can? And they brought John Herron in, and he couldn't answer the question. So then they said, well, who was in charge when you signed all these agreements with the state of Vermont in 2002? And then there was light. And Mary Hayes appeared out of retirement. She appeared out of retirement, and the board member said, did you check off on this memorandum of understanding? And she said, yes, I believe I did. Was that your job? Yes, it was. Well, did you tell them that this was something that the company could honor? Yes, I believe I did. Did you consult with an attorney? I don't recall, but I'm sure that I did. Did that attorney talk to you about what it meant to sign on to all these agreements with the state of Vermont? Well, I believe we probably had that conversation. Did that attorney advise you that even if you didn't want to honor these commitments, that you could get away with it and that it would be fraud? Well, I don't recall. It was the highlight of my 8 days to watch these people squirm and to know that our Public Service Board has held their heads high, they've stayed out of the press, they're doing their job, and they're taking the testimony. They're going to render a decision. But to wrap up, I got to tell you what Entergy's strategy was the whole time. And in all my years, I sat through many of these proceedings. Too many. I have never seen the word objection stated so many times.
Don't say the word objection. Stop.
The Connecticut River's being heated up. What did they say?
Objection.
They said it louder than that. Your Honor, you know, this plant could impact Vermont's tourism.
Objection.
Your Honor, this plant, you know, is doing no economic good for the ratepayers of the state of Vermont.
Objection.
Lawyer after lawyer after lawyer, a record number of objections entered into the record, all in the end to create a difficult legal environment for the appeal that ultimately will follow the Public Service Board's rejection of Entergy's request. What we need to be doing in the next year is not forgetting that we're winning and this company is losing and stumbling, not just here, but everywhere they operate. Our brothers and sisters in New York are standing up against Indian Point. Our brothers and sisters in Massachusetts, many of them are here, are standing up for Pilgrim. There are problems at the Fitzpatrick plant. And finally, just this past week, they're raising hell in Michigan around the Palisades plant. Entergy has big problems, and we're the biggest problem that they have. So let's keep it up. Thank you.
A big round of applause for Chris Williams. We thank Chris for being our eyes and ears up in Montpelier and across the nation, really, as all of these things unfold. So before we bring out our first performers, we need your help. So obviously today has been a huge success, and the parade looked amazing. But it took a lot to do. And with all of the permits and the law enforcement and renting this beautiful theater to hold today's event in, which obviously we needed it, we need your contributions to help offset. So it wasn't a cheap day, and definitely was not too cheap to meter. So what we are going to do is some volunteers with these boisterous buckets are going to be passing out the buckets. They were suggesting that you give a donation of $10. If you give a little bit more, that's great. If you can't give a dime, that's totally no problem. So just make as much of a contribution as you can, and that will definitely help defer the cost for today. So we very much appreciate it. And this is grassroots democracy right here. This is how it works. We don't have big corporate funders. We don't have the big money. We just have ourselves. We just have the people. So contribute what you can. We really appreciate it. So while the buckets are going around, I want to introduce our first performance of the day. You may have seen these performers wandering the streets of Brattleboro last summer, providing a little levity for our for our gallery walks here every third Friday. So I'd like to welcome to the stage for your enjoyment the vocal cords, everyone. Come on up.
So, April, what year was that? April 2 years ago? Almost?
Last year.
Last year? Oh, gosh, time goes fast when you're trying to shut down another. Governor Shumlin was here.
Use the mic.
The mic? Okay, thank you. Governor Shumlin was here in town, and he gave a rousing speech on the Common, talking about the 10 lies of Entergy. And a friend of mine, the woman over there in the gray suit, and I had this little conversation about what we should do about that, because there's a song. There's a song. If you're a vocal cord, you have to make a song. So here we are, the 12 lies of Entergy. There were more than 10. So we had to say 12. We will sing for you now. Take it away.
And will always obey Vermont law. The third lie Vermonters heard from Entergy will close in 2012 on the decommissioning and will always obey Vermont law. The fourth lie Vermonters heard from Entergy will run it how we're supposed to close in 2012 on the decommissioning and will always obey Vermont law. The fifth lie Vermonters heard from Entergy, no underground pipes. The water goes to close time from the decommissioning and will always obey Vermont law. The sixth lie Vermonters heard from
Give it up for the vocal cords. Give another round of applause for the vocal cords, everyone. Come on. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my, it gives us so much fodder. And thanks for Governor Sumlin for being the inspiration for some of those. So our next speaker, it is her 6th term serving in the Vermont Senate. And she is the chair of the Government Operations Committee and a member of both the Government Accountability and Judiciary Committees. She's introduced, and this is very important, she introduced Act 160, which gave us, which became the legal basis for giving the power to the people to close Vermont Yankee and not to the corporations. I recently learned this. Her introduction to politics came during a minor tussle during a grade school or during elementary school. So please, everyone, welcome to the stage Vermont Senator Jeanette White.
This is really pretty awful. I often feel in the spotlight, but never quite. So I just have to comment on the singers. I don't think that Entergy really meant to lie when they said they would follow Act 160, that they would abide by it, because when we introduced that piece of legislation, no one in their right mind, except probably you, had any thought that we would actually say no. So they fully expected to abide by Act 160, because the governor supported it, Entergy supported it, everybody supported when we passed Act 160. So they didn't really lie. So I wanted to say that I don't know whatever powers that you believe in, or gods that you believe in, or nature, but a year ago, when we had the rally on the Common, it was a glorious, beautiful day. Today is a glorious, beautiful day. So I think whoever those powers are think that we are right. So the legislature gets a lot of credit for passing the laws and all that kind of stuff, but it's really you guys that stand behind us and support us while we're up there that give us the ability to do that. And working with people from all over the state, not just here in Windham County. There are, what I found out was that there are lots and lots of states watching Vermont, and there are lots of countries watching Vermont. Because if a little tiny state of 620,000 people with not a lot of resources can take on Goliath, then certainly other people can also. Last summer, a crew from France was here, and I interviewed them. It was great fun, because they're looking at they're trying to figure out how to do the same kinds of things. So Chris, I said, it's going to be really hard to follow you. And he said, it's okay. I'm a troublemaker. You are a lawmaker. So I don't have to try and get you all psyched up here. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about some of the pieces of legislation that have been introduced so far this year, and some that we hope to introduce, some which we know have no chance of passing, and some that we hope will pass, but it'll start a conversation and it'll get people worked up about them. There is the Greenfields legislation that says that VY Entergy is supposed to return that site to a green field, and that was in their contract. But apparently we have slightly different understandings about what greenfields in. I think that maybe some of their attorneys thought it meant, you know, a lot of green paint. I'm not sure what they thought they were agreeing to, but that has been introduced, and it would require them to set up a fund to restore it to a green field when it's shut down, which we hope will be very soon. It's already shut down. Well, you're right. It is already shut down. It is shut down. We just want it shut down permanently. Yes. So I introduced a bill that would put it's not a tax, it's a fee. It's a waste storage fee on spent fuel. If you take a bunch of stuff up to the landfill, you pay for it. You pay, I don't know, $6 a ton. I don't know what you pay.
$135 a ton.
Oh, all right, there's somebody that uses it a lot. We have put the same fee on the spent fuel rods. But there's two levels of the fee. That's the fee if it's in the dry cask units. It's a much higher fee if it's left in the pool. It's more dangerous to leave it in the pool, so it should be a higher fee. I mean, if you bring certain things to the landfill, you pay more than the poundage, because they're dangerous items. We also, and that would set up a fund, that fee would then set up a fund that would be used to make sure that those storage units that are sitting there are safe. Now, I think that what we want to do is take part of it and put into that pool, but I think that they are responsible for seeing that that's there, and they should be paying us a fee, but we shouldn't be entirely funding them. Those casks. Thank you. Good thing I've got a prompter down here. Out of that pool, they should pay for part of that themselves. So I want part of that to be used to go into the thermal efficiency fund, so that we can actually then decrease our need for additional electricity in the future. The other thing that we've been working on, and I've had a couple of hearings on this and plan to have one next week, is with Vermont Emergency Management. I don't know if you know how the funding, what I should say is, I know that I only represent Vermont, but when we think about what we're doing up there, most of us keep in mind New Hampshire and Massachusetts, so you are not forgotten. I meant to say that earlier because I know it's really important, and you feel like you're being impacted by us and have no voice here. But we do try to keep that in mind. So we've been, I don't know if you know how the funding works for just the immediate zone, the 10-mile zone. It's called the Emergency Management Zone, and there is a fund called the Radiological Emergency Response Fund, and it funds things like extra cones for Dummerston if they need them in case of an evacuation, or pagers for the emergency management directors in the towns. One of the things that we found out, and Red Cross has been working on this for a long time, is on the sheltering. And Vermont Entergy hasn't been paying toward the sheltering in the emergency evacuation plan. First of all, we don't think we have a plan that works, but even if we did.
Does the government sign it?
There isn't. That's a very complicated thing, and I don't want to get into it now because there are like 3 or 4 different things that you sign at different times. So yeah. What we found out from Red Cross is that if we really were to fund adequately sheltering for 20% of the population just in this area, in the emergency management zone, it would cost $726,000. And we are putting that in the budget this year. Vermont Emergency Management has agreed to put it in. So Entergy will have to pony up $726,000. They're not gonna like it, and I'm sure they'll fight it, and I'm sure they'll challenge us on it. And that's just for the 10-mile zone. And what we found out from Fukushima, as you all know, is that really the area is a 50-mile zone. So if you multiply, well, it is a lot bigger than that. But what NRC said, the 50 miles is what they should plan for. So.
And what about the other 80%?
I agree with you, but what FEMA says is that you have to plan to shelter 20% because the other 80%, what they found in most instances in any kind of a disaster is that 80% find someplace else to go to. They go to their family in Florida or they go to their whatever, but there's about 20% of... What? Or they die. Yeah. Anyway, so we're putting that into the budget, and then we're planning on introducing another piece that would force them to use the cooling towers. We're asking them to build cooling towers and to design a whole new system. They already have them. It might not pass, it probably won't, but it will start the conversation and it'll get people going and excited. And those people that need to get going and get excited are you, because without you guys behind us trying to sit up there and convince, there are 180 people up there, you know, and aside from me, everybody up there has an ego. I mean, you have to put yourself in that position and run and raise money and get up there and pretend like you know what you're doing. So we have to convince all those other 179 people, you don't have to convince me, that we need to continue working on this. So that's where you come in, and the people you know all across the entire state. So with that, thank you very much.
Another round of applause for Jeanette White, Senator Jeanette White. We are so very lucky, both here in the state and regionally, to have representatives like Jeanette White representing us at the state and at the federal level. And I think it's important for us to take a minute to recognize that fact that this is how it's supposed to work. We're supposed to talk about these issues, think about these issues, and then let our elected representatives know what we want, what we need. And that's how communities work. That's how democracy works. And we're doing that right now. So, for our next presenter.
The Louisiana-based Entergy Corporation coasted into Vermont in 2002 selling sunshine and roses. As owner-operator of the Vermont Yankee nuclear reactor, it quickly resorted to bullying and truth manipulation in order to force state approval for continued operation. The state declined. Entergy self-defense.
Okay, so for the record, please state your name.
The name's Sonny Spinco, Louisiana, Entergy, Bayou Country. Greetings, cow lovers.
So, as part of this agreement, Entergy agrees to follow Vermont laws and regulations. You will not sue the state, correct?
That's not a problem. I think we're getting along real good. You guys like chocolate, don't you? I got some chocolate bars out in the van. And back rubs. We're going to have some back rubs down at the State House. Too cheap to meter. I think that's what matters.
What? Entergy? You did it at the Super Bowl. You're not doing it in Latches.
There are known knowns. There are things we know. And we also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know.
Excuse me, but is this an unknown unknown?
I'm not.
Several unknowns. And
Okay, so how is it possible that this cooling tower collapsed?
Can you guarantee Entergy will no longer defer routine maintenance of Vermont Yankee?
First of all, I want to point out, most of the cooling tower did not fall down. I think we can agree on that. Most of it's still there. You got to expect a few glitches when you're running at 120%. And I think we can agree that the lawn looks great. All that water meant that we didn't have to water that lawn for about 3 months. And finally, in terms of maintenance, our shareholders expect nothing less than the full maintenance of our our equipment, and it's too cheap to meter.
It ain't dependable.
So there are buried pipes, correct?
Well, now that depends on your definition of pipes and underground. I don't see any pipes, do you? I think it's a little bit more like a garden hose. I think that's what you should be picturing.
Explain how Entergy is addressing these radioactive leaks and protecting the public trust, our water.
Well, first of all, we're not very close to any water. And, our crack pipes, our crack team of specialists are repairing now with some state-of-the-art sealing equipment. All right? And I think it bears repeating that it's too cheap to meter.
Crack pop, run a crack show.
This here is the Entergy softball team. We can play softball or hardball. That's totally up to you.
Sonny, you repeatedly said you would follow Vermont state law. Who are they?
It's just our softball team.
Well, all right then. I think that's it. We've had enough. We've had enough, and we're not going to take this anymore. You know what? It's our choice, and it's our voice. Come on, everyone with me now. It's our choice, and it's our voice. Our choice, it's our voice. Come on, come on. Our voice. Our voice. Our voice. people. Oh, that sunny spit comes and all the lies and thank you to our resident heckler, by the way. This is more of a conversation tonight, isn't it, rather than a presentation. Kind of enjoying that dynamic. So our final speaker today, and thanks for all your patience, thanks for all your beautiful energy today. Our final speaker today has been an instrumental figure in the movement to end nuclear power for more than 20 years, right here in the Northeast. As the director of the Citizens Awareness Network, she led a grassroots movement to successfully shut down the Yankee Row reactor in Row, Massachusetts. That's right. And for the past 2 years, the Canadian community formed across Vermont and Massachusetts surrounding the next phase in this saga. Yeah, that's right, the decommissioning and cleanup of Vermont Yankee. So she's been doing that, and I guarantee today, with all the sunshine, she is over the moon happy to have her very muddy road leading to her house get dried out. So please jump way up and down for Deb Pat.
But I think you look great anyway. How about that? I'll take something out of Entergy's book to start with. So, a hat, yes, a hat. But I'm blinded by the light. There we go. So, let's see if that should help. So, as I want to mention, because people in Vermont and Massachusetts never think of the state of Connecticut, of course. But in fact, Ken was instrumental in the closure of the Connecticut Yankee reactor and the Millstone Unit 1 reactor. So, we knocked off Gray, and New England Coalition knocked off Maine Yankee. So there was a lot less nuclear power in New England. So there's been great energy here today, and it's really wonderful to see. But I know a lot of people have felt a lot of outrage, a lot of frustration, and a lot of helplessness on and off during this process. So although we can be here and we can cheer, I really want to get to the heart of that matter because it's really important for people to understand where we are. Because we read about the lawsuits, and we read about Entergy filing one suit after another, and one problem after another, and the NRC just sort of being a bobblehead. And we get discouraged. But in fact, we are at a tipping point, and it is really important for all of you to understand that. It is really important. So why are we outraged? That should be an easy one, right? We're outraged that Entergy, after having a vote in the Vermont Senate that said no go, after not getting a revote in 2011, has basically been able to string this process out. Now, what's important is in 2002, and Ken was involved in the hearings, as was New England Coalition and the Conservation Law Foundation, for the hearing that Entergy had with the Public Service Board to buy Vermont Yankee. And it made commitments then. And one of the commitments it made was if it didn't have a certificate of public good in March 2012, it would shut Vermont Yankee and it would only commence decommissioning activities. That was part of the contract. And as we know, it is not doing that. It is not doing that. And what it has engaged in is a series of endless lawsuits based on shredding the contract it made with the state of Vermont in 2002. Now, why are we frustrated and discouraged at this moment? Well, we're frustrated because they're still operating even though the state of Vermont gave them the boot. We're frustrated and outraged because they're using the judicial system as a kind of manipulation to keep operating as long as they can. And every time the state makes them accountable in one way or another, what do? They sue them. They basically sue us. That's what they keep doing. And yet it is inevitable that we will prevail. And why do we feel helpless? We feel helpless because at this moment so much of this is going on, as it were, outside of our hands. In the appellate court, 2 proceedings in the appellate court, one over Act 160, another over the fee that the state is charging for Entergy to run. Then there's the Public Service Board hearing. Then there is the A&R looking at thermal pollution, and there's the Supreme Court, Vermont Supreme Court, in which Entergy has asked the Supreme Court, in fact, to eviscerate the Public Service Board and rule directly, giving it a certificate of public good. Even though in Murtha's court, right here in Vermont, when Murtha said, "What do you want, Entergy?" Entergy said, "Oh, please, let us go back to the Public Service Board. Let us go back there. We'll listen to anything they say," until they got there. And basically at this point, Entergy is saying that the Vermont Public Service Board has no power over it, even though Murtha said it did. So that's part of why we feel helpless. But we have to remember the unique situation that we are in. It is hard to remember because this has gone on for a long time. And Jeanette mentioned it, with the passage of Act 160, Entergy approved of it because they were sure that they and the Douglas administration were going to win. That was going to happen, and a couple of people were going to whine and complain, and they were going to get a certificate of public good, and it was going to be a breeze. A breeze. And 4 years of organizing, 4 door knocking, town by town, street by street, Vermonters woke up and realized that they had an opportunity to change the course of history for their state and for all of New England by bringing down this Goliath. And after 4 years, in fact, the Senate voted to reject Entergy getting a certificate of public good. And then Entergy spent a year tap dancing trying to get a revote and could not get a revote. And when it couldn't get a revote, it sued us. And it continued to sue us, attempting to continue to operate even though it signed this contract that in fact said that it would abide by Vermont law. Now, this is a really important time, even though it looks like everything is outside of our hands, because it is not outside of our hands. It is a moment where we must remain committed. We must remain resolute, and there are many reasons for it. First of all, there is all this legislation that is going on that has to be supported, that all of you need to contact your legislators and say, what's happening with the green fielding legislation? What's happening with the spent fuel legislation? What are we doing to hold Entergy accountable? This is a sinking ship, and if we don't get the life rafts off now, there may be nothing left for us to get off in the end. This is really an important time. And where are the life rafts? And I want to give a broader perspective on this because we get very caught up in what's happening right here. But, you know, UBS, which is a financial institution, earlier this year came out with a report that in fact raised the fact that Vermont Yankee, Fitzpatrick, which is in central New York, and the Pilgrim reactor were undermining Entergy's bottom line. And UBS was saying, look, you're going to need to close these nukes to make yourself solid, to make yourself financially viable. And what did UBS base this on? It's actually SEC filings, because of course it's only in the SEC filings that you see the truth of things. And in those filings, Entergy's Vermont Yankee reactor was worth less today than it was when it bought the nuke. This is very serious. I mean, and when Entergy bought the nuke, it paid about half the price of what that nuke, that glorious crystal sitting there on the Connecticut River, was worth. If you think of it, the condenser, which they have to replace in 2016 because they've been able to delay maintenance once again, costs over $100 million. The condenser may wind up costing more than the reactor is worth. That's where we are at this breathtaking moment. And it's important to see it in a larger context, because UBS has said that Entergy stock should be sold. And 10 other financial institutions have it on hold right now. This is really important. This is very serious. Entergy is in financial trouble. In fact, Citizens Awareness Network put in a 2.206 petition last Tuesday saying that, in fact, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission should shutter Vermont Yankee, Fitzpatrick, and the Pilgrim reactors because they don't have the financial viability to run them and keep them going safely when they're in so much trouble financially. And what happened? A day later, somehow, it must have been a coincidence, the NRC requested filings from Entergy showing where their financial viability was for Vermont Yankee. J. Wayne Leonard last year, the old boss, he got out in time before this whole thing goes down the tubes. In fact, said Vermont Yankee was just about breaking even, and that was a year ago. So one of the reasons for all of this, and it's a bigger context and it's really important, is that, and this is in some ways very hard, because all the issues in terms of gas and fracking and the low price for gas at this point is actually pushing coal and nuclear plants out of business. It's a mixed bag. It's very hard, but they're cannibalizing each other at this point. Coal plants have already shut, and as have nukes. And if you look at the Kewanee reactor in the Midwest, owned by Duke, basically got the NRC to give it a renewal license, but it couldn't sell it. It couldn't sell it because it didn't have a long-term power contract at a cheap enough price. It could not sell it. It is closing. It is closing because there are no power contracts for nukes. They can't feed gas. They can't come in cheap enough at this point to do it. And that's where Vermont Yankee is in this. The Crystal River reactor had such a large repair on a vessel that it just screwed up, of course, because it did a cheap job of fixing it, and then it has to get fixed again. It is closing. It is closing as well. So here we have Vermont Yankee, and it is at the tipping point. And the job at this point is to make Entergy abide by the contract it signed and pile on one legislation after another to hold them accountable. These are the last potential days to do it. These are the days when the green fielding legislation needs support, where the spent fuel legislation needs support, where the Red Cross legislation needs support, because each of these, whatever you want to call it, fees, fines, taxes, each of this pushes them over the brink. UBS, in fact, said that the $12 million that Entergy was going to have to pay to operate Vermont Yankee each year was one of the reasons they felt that it was going to go out of business. That's how close we are. So this is not a moment to be discouraged. This is not a moment to be helpless or to whine. This is a moment to have resolve, to commit ourselves once again to shut this nuke. This is the time to make their stay in Vermont as miserable as possible. We must remain undaunted. We must remain committed. Committed for ourselves, committed to a green energy future for our children and theirs. So join us. Grab history. Make it ours. Thank you.
You all have been such an amazing audience, and thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us and for making today so beautiful. So on your way out, think of the words that Deb just spoke of and leave with that inspiration. This movement is all about community. It's about building community, about building democracy. So on your way out, sign up, keep involved, stay informed about what we're up to. Do some projects. We really are encouraging people to get involved in some projects, whether it's video or photo projects, community collages, blogs, video blogs. Stay involved, stay inspired. Thank you so much for everyone. I want to thank and give a shout out to David Woodbury, who's doing our lights in town. Darren Galactic Theater, UCTV for filming this. Of course, all of our speakers, Chris Williams and Matt White, Jeff Cass. The vocal cords did an amazing performance. All of the people out put together the skit. And finally, DJ Selector B over here.